Welcome back here at Fish on Northwest. We're here in the Bait Lab. Bait Lab presentation is brought to you by Sportco and Outdoor Emporium. Everything, pretty much everything you see here on the table, you can find at Sportco or OE, and if you can't get in the store, then check them out online, sportco.com. So the past few weeks, we've been talking a lot of blackmouth fishing, and a lot of our fisheries have to do with, troll presentation, and we've shown you a number of different items or, methods, gear selection, items to go after them on the troll, which can be very effective. Something I really, really enjoy, now have been doing for the past couple of years, is jigging for Puget Sound blackmouth, because it can be so effective at times of the year. You find a pile of fish, get on top of them, stay on top of them, and jig. You can find some pretty productive days ahead of you. So it all starts with understanding, putting this all together. For me, it starts with the rod and reel, of course, like most of our fisheries. And now we've opted to switch up to the Edge Rod's slow pitch series. This is a SLJR. It's a slow jig or slow pitch rod. 661, which means it's a 6 foot, 6 inch, 1 power. It's rated at 20 to 40 pounds. Don't let the size of the rod fool you. The butt of this rod is slightly smaller than the diameter of my pinky finger, but it's still rated at a 20 to 40 pound rating. And once you get a short 6.5 foot one-piece rod like this in your hand for jigging, you're going to understand just how valuable swapping over to something like this is and how much more enjoyable it is. Okay, I've coupled that with an accurate Valiant reel. Now, you don't have to use a lever action reel. You could literally put a level 1 reel on here. You can use a line counter if you choose. You don't really need a line counter when jigging, because typically we're watching our electronics, and you can look at your electronics, find your depth. We're taking our jigs, for the most part, dropping them to bottom, come up a crank, and we start our jigging process, okay? Every once in a while, you're just kind of looking at your electronics, gauging the depth. If it increases a little bit, open up your lever, open up your bail, drop it back down a little more, hit bottom, come up a crank. So you always want to stay or keep your presentation within a foot or so of the bottom. Is where your optimal jigging is when going after blackmouth. And for me, I like the lever action. You set the drag, free spool down, drop pretty fast. It has a really pretty fast pickup as far as line travel. It's just a really great type of reel to put on this application. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, in this first part here, the concept of jigging and how to, prevent things like tip wrap. A lot of guys, when you're using longer rods especially, 8.5, 9 foot, 1 is a fatigue factor, okay? 2 is you complain because it always gets wrapped on the tip. With these nice short rods designed for slow pitching jigs or pitching jigs, and jigging in Puget Sound now with these, this is primarily done in the ocean with these rods, but we've moved it into Puget Sound. Having a lot of fun, a lot of success. Tip wrap seems to be one of the complaints I get from people. Now, it's pretty easy to do. First of all, this rod is designed to just, it sits right here underneath your elbow really comfortably. And again, these rods are not designed to bring high into the sky with a lot of bend to them. It's not a 10.5 foot rod. This isn't your classic salmon rod, okay? We have to remind ourselves that this rod is designed to winch fish up, so to speak. And by doing so, our action or range of motion is basically from the side of the boat to the top of your visual line here, off the top of your ball cap, for example. We don't want to exceed much higher than that. We're going to high stick the rod, put a lot of pressure on the butt end of this rod, potentially break them if we're not fishing them right. So that's the beauty of this rod, though. It has a lot of power in it, but it has an optimal range of travel that you want to keep it in. So when jigging, we're bringing it up to about that visual height, a few feet up off of the side of the boat. And when I come down, so it's a jig motion up, very slight pause, if any at all, and I'm letting the rod fall naturally. Jig it up, let the rod fall naturally. It's that natural fall that allows that jig to float and flutter on down in its natural trajectory. I'm not holding it back by keeping resistance on the rod. I really have to let that jig fall to impart the action that I want it to and how they're designed to operate. So when I jig that up, I actually put a little roll to it on my downward fall, okay? I bring it up and slowly I'll show you, I actually roll it kind of pushing the line off the front of the rod. I put a roll on the line as it drops off. And it's just a nanosecond of time, but that little pause and roll forward makes the biggest difference in keeping that line off the tip of your rod. So I jig it up, I roll it down. I jig it up, I roll it down. Let it free fall. Those fish are going to hit it as that jig's falling. So oftentimes when you come down and you're waiting for a second till your line goes tight again to where you can see it's time to jig it back up, those fish are going to hit it when it's falling. You may not feel it when the rod is halfway down. Sometimes you do. Sometimes they grab it and take off with it and it tightens up instantly. Other times you feel a little, tap tap, and they got a hold of it. So rod drops down, that line goes tight. You just come up with a nice easy hook set and just let them run. Okay, and when, again, fighting Chinook on these short rods, you may experience at times they want to go under the boat. You got to keep them from getting your line against the lower chine. You got to extend your arms out, and again, not raising it up high, but extend it out. Try to keep that line down away from the boat and get them to hopefully run the other way. You can put great side pressure on these fish. With these rods, you can really put some power to them and control your fish. It's a little different than fighting lingcod or halibut on a rod like this. These salmon obviously are going to run a whole lot more, and it's a little bit more of a finesse fishing in how you're going to fight the fish with this rod. But if you're using longer rods and you're feeling some arm fatigue, check out the slow pitch rod series by Edge, and I think you're going to be pretty happy once you actually put this into your arsenal, get out there and start jigging for blackmouth and Puget Sound. You're going to see just how well this type of setup works. Okay, going to jump out for a quick break. Coming back with part 2, we're going to talk about the jigs, the setup, how to put the hooks on, and truly 3 or 4 different ways to set these jigs up to go after blackmouth and Puget Sound. After this break, right here, Fishing on Northwest. All right, welcome back here in the Bait Lab as we continue talking about jigging for blackmouth and Puget Sound. Now we're going to get into the work end of the presentation here. We're going to get into the actual terminal gear and the jig. And this is tonight, it's all about my Grim Reefer jigs. I have so much confidence in how they performed the last couple of years. It's really all I use in Puget Sound. I've used the Puget Pounders and some of the other ones, Point Wilsons, what have you. These Grim Reefers get it done for me time and time again, day in and day out. So let's take a look here at the table. And I got a variety of colors, but more importantly, I want to show you, and these are some of my go-tos, herring aid and sardine, of course the Galaxy and the FHN Galaxy. A lot of these that you see with the glow tape, they work tremendous because you have the colorization and the UV of the HyperViz tape coupled with some of the glow. Great combination. What I want to walk you through is the different ways I have the hooks configured on here. When you get your jigs from Grim Reefer, for example, they're going to come with the jig, the hooks, the snap rings, and the swivels. And you want to make sure you're always putting that trailer hook there on your barrel swivel, okay? It's an open eye Siwash that you crimp on there. If you're replacing hooks, always go with a 4/0 Gamakatsu hook, Big River. Will get it done for sure. I use a lot of those. This sickle style hook is great because we're barbless, and it's got this amazing anchor point. We lose very few fish using this style of hook on these jigs, okay? So Brad snap ring is ideal, size 5 on the tail end of these if you're replacing them, coupled with a barrel swivel size 3 and your hooks. Now, if I'm going to rig a sliding, this one here is rigged up as a slider, okay? So my line actually travels through the jig and it makes it a sliding. The rest of these are static. The hooks are basically at the bottom end, or I've put some also at the top, rigging it more like a tuna jig or some type of jig out in the ocean, but it's very applicable in Puget Sound even when you're fishing for Chinook. So taking a look at this slider rig here, very simple to do. These are 2 3/0 hooks with a nice glow bead on top of it to protect your hook and knot from the jig. The weight of the pounding of that jig on top of there can prematurely wear out that line. So I put a nice bead. I add a little extra glow with that size of bead. And now, one thing I'm doing is this bottom tab here on my Grim Reefer, I'm taking my pliers and I'm slightly just rolling that up, put a little bend in it, and same with the top eye, a little bit towards the jig. That just allows the line to travel to and through. Now I'm rigging that on about a 18-inch leader tied to a barrel swivel, and then it's really easy for me just to snap the barrel swivel to my dual lock on my rod, and I'm fishing it. And that's if I'm fishing the slider. The rest of these, basically snap them right to your dual lock at the tip of your rod, because there's nothing wrong with having that dual lock sitting right at the top end of these jigs. The fish don't care. You don't have to tie a knot right to the jig. You go with a dual lock barrel swivel or bearing swivel, so that you have great ability of it to spin and not tangle up your line, and also that way you can change colors out throughout the day without having to retie all the time. So fishing a single hook off the bottom works very well. I've also gone to putting on an additional hook, much like we would on jigs for tuna, as I mentioned. Snell those at the top of that. It still leaves enough room in here to put your dual lock in there and secure that jig to your line. Last year I even tried tying some of these up with 40-pound mono, crimped with a barrel swivel off of that hook. This also works if you can't find the types of hooks you're looking for in the store. You know, these gummies on the cord work great because it's so supple, but these hooks stand out a little bit to the side, but boy, they work pretty well. That's a novel alternative to create that, and it's very simple to do. All these colors work, and I got a ton more colors coming from Jason and Tyler over at Grim Reefer, or Fathers and Sons, actually. And yes, I do apply some scent to the side of my jigs. Oftentimes, I'll put some Potskie's Fire Gel herring or even anise on the other side of them, just a little bit, doesn't take much, and that way they are scented. There's no downsides to scenting any of our lures we're putting in Puget Sound waters, as Tommy and I have expressed many, many times. Pretty simple setup. I walked you through the rod process and how to jig appropriately. Real quickly, you know, tides are key, and much like success in our other fisheries, if you are fishing 1 to 2 hours before high or low slack, through the slack, and on the downs, the other side of it, 1 to 2 hours, you're probably going to find fish piled up, you know, pretty well in some areas where the bait stacks up. The biggest challenge when jigging is wind. If you have a pretty good tide change, 6, 7, 8 foot, no problem. The boat's moving with the current. You can run your kicker motor and keep your lines vertical as you need to for jigging, and it's not a problem. If you're getting pushed around by a lot of wind, that becomes problematic, and you may find it's more frustrating than not. So low wind days, moderate current days, and of course when the sun's out, ideal time to get out there and jig for blackmouth or salmon in this coming summer on Puget Sound. Gonna do it for us here in the Bait Lab. You got any questions, just hit us up, message us here at Fish Hunt Northwest, send us an email, or catch us on social media platforms. Gonna jump out for a quick break. We come back, part 3, finish it out down there on the Siletz River with Kyle Bushelman, Scott Call, and of course the Viking behind the camera. That's coming up right here after this break, right here at Fish Hunt Northwest.